Every year, the stars of Nigerian entertainment industry come out to award shows to celebrate their achievements and successes. Within the past decade, both Nigerian film and Nigerian music have flourished beyond the expectations of even the most optimistic experts. They contribute annually some $1.8 billion to the Nigerian economy. In this final episode of Sounds of Nollywood, we'll investigate the sustainability of this momentum and look to the future to see what Nollywood and the Nigerian music industry will be in the next decade.
I am Georges Collinet. In their paper, Global Nollywood, published in 2013, scholars Krinks and Okome state that Nollywood has championed an unprecedented cinematic revolution on the African continent. That was written 10 years ago. How has Nollywood been able to sustain this? Well, after all our interviews, I can report that Nigerians have a deep reservoir of fascinating stories to tell. Stories about their ethnic diversity, traditions, and culture.
We take our culture very seriously. So many things have happened. You know, I think we've been invaded from the air by other cultures, other stations, other broadcasting networks from outside of Nigeria and all of that. But we take our cultures very seriously. So in spite of whatever unhealthy competitions that may exist, you'll find that the Yoruba want to present the best of their culture. The Igbo want to do the same thing. Everybody wants to do the same thing. Everybody wants to do that. So to a large extent, to the extent that they are able to, that they have the savvy to do it, they try to do it.
My sister, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wait till nightfall. Wait for the bride.
Actually, when I heard the news, I thought it was you yourself taking a new wife again.
No, this is for my son. He needs his own wife. This is just like a food you can't share with any son.
No, it is more like the horse your friend cannot borrow.
Tunde Kelani, popularly known as TK, is a filmmaker with more than 4 decades in the Nigerian film industry. Here he speaks about Nigeria's rich cultural heritage in his work.
People started me off in oral tradition. Everybody had a story to tell me. You know, everybody was telling me the story about the tortoise and things. Even my peers were telling me stories. And because I was lonely, 3 years after that, I started to read Yoruba. I started to read and write Yoruba. And I discovered, I started to read Iofagua books. And this unbelievable narrative, about the fantasy, all this, the Diofagua world is something else. So I read the 5 books of Diofagua, and it's okay. And again, I was in the community and took part in everything. The cultural events, processions, a Egungun festival, or the Yoruba music, and discovered the Yoruba theater. All of this had prepared me for what I wanted to do. So I think that I needed film to share cultural experience.
It's a country of over 200 million people that speak over 500 native languages. A good portion of those are Christians. We have the Muslims, we have the traditionalists. And, we're all in this space living mostly in harmony, I would say. I know that there's been clashes here and there, but for how diverse we are and how jarring our history is, I feel like we figured out that what unites us is way stronger than what divides us. And, that is how we've been able to live together as people. And it just shows how resilient we are. We're so resilient. We make the best out of nothing. Like, we've been handed the worst dice. It's not been very convenient as a people. And it spills into everything. Like, even let's talk about Nollywood. Like, we've done the best with the little we have at our disposal. We've been able to achieve what we've had so far. And even more so in recent times where, now you're even seeing external investors seeing that, there is something here. It's because we've been able to build something from the nothing we had, and everything just shows the kind of people we are.
Inidami Okoji just stated some of the difficulties Nigerian filmmakers face in general. Well, it's fair to say that life is not easy for creatives who often are the biggest risk takers. Mr. Bond Emiruwa, filmmaker and former president of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, explains the role of inventiveness and innovations in Nigerian movies.
They say if you push a man to the wall, he will rebound. If you push a Nigerian to the wall, he will find a way through it. The simple word that there's no mountain too high is a Nigerian. That's it basically. Nigerians are extremely creative and innovative, natively or otherwise. That's actually what happened in the entertainment business. Where people were allowed to flex their muscle, people were allowed to just create, where you couldn't restrict anybody at that realm. Nigerians broke loose. So in essence, I will take a VHS camera and I will take $5,000 and do what somebody is looking for $2 million to do. And when you look at it, it's really a movie. Whenever you say it's really a movie, if you take the format, it might not have as good quality in terms of sound, but the audience that is watching it, do they really know the difference? They can relate more with this if you come back to it. Because this is my story. The guy jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper in New York, he has never seen a skyscraper in his life. So all that story doesn't matter to him. But he has seen enough graveyards, he has seen enough. He has heard stories of people they say did juju money and all that. He can relate with that. And that was what Nollywood, but I mean, I did a scene once in Checkpoint, and somebody had to get shot, and I look at it today sometimes and I laugh. We had to plant knockout under his shirt. Now to plant the knockout, we had to pad it up so he doesn't get injured. So we had this small, like, you know, blood, capsule of blood, which we created, taped to it. So when it blew, it actually blew the blood too. And somebody points a gun, which also had like the same banger taped to the side, away from the camera. Those are some of the things we did way back then. Tracking shots. Where did you get the tracks from? We didn't have the tracks, but you saw tracking shots, you know, and all that. But that was the innovativeness of the Nigerian.
You might say, well, movie makers from other African countries are also inventive as they explore their traditions and cultures in their own work. So, what makes Nigerian filmmakers so unique? I asked film director Tunde Ikelani and film scholar Melita Zeish why Nigerian films stand out amongst their peers.
It was very easy to believe and to seduce people. And we don't talk about this, but it was very important. But of course, it was not a cinema. There were tapes or cuts of films that were used in very different settings. And therefore, I talk about this because it was so very important later when traveling theater companies started to use the same way of, you know, not only showing the cinema from the beginning to the end with a very focused linear story, but in a much more creative way, as to augment. It was a sort of augmented reality, if you want, you know, in today's terms, to augment the performances they were doing in different settings, in different, you know, it was outdoors or indoors, in very, diverse locations. And this was also important later for Nollywood, because even Nollywood, the research that I did showed to me that practically nobody was watching Nollywood films in cinema, you know, but it was in the shops, the hairdressers, in a bar, in a restaurant, and also when people watched it at their home, there were so many people there, so it was it was very different for a classical theater. So the narration was much more loose, but of course also much more creative. And because these were only parts, only clips, if you want, of course, not only clips in classical terms, but also in terms that there were, when you had CDs, you had two CDs, so you had to change one and then insert the other into a player, or, you know, very unstable electricity supply, or, you know, where people were talking about something else. So these screenings were also very interrupted. So the film as developed in Nigeria was very different. But I just wanted to say that this started, these things that we know now from Nollywood and from film video cultures also in other African countries like Ghana, for example. These things started with traveling theater. It was in Nigeria mostly Yoruba traveling theaters. The first film directors like Ola Balogun or, you know, Herbert Ogunde, they were all also engaged in theater. And this was the way that they were using film, not as a movie, as a cinema theater work.
You know, had always supported Francophone Africa, and they funded them and so on. But you know, our own experience was different because the British left us alone. They were not interested, they didn't fund us, but we didn't stop, we didn't wait. You know, so we were more, Nigerians are more active, you know, and so on. So that was the difference between that. We didn't wait to be funded, you know, it didn't appeal to us to, you know, apply for a fund and wait 2 years, start washing cars and think, no, we will do it now. We want to do it now. That's more or less, that's the of independent filmmaking in Nigeria, because that's what had, look, the government caught on a bit late and tried to catch up with the industry, and suddenly they realized that Nigeria has given Africa another brand, which you know, perhaps it's exportable to the rest of the world or Africa, you know, by this spirit of not waiting, but just doing it with whatever you have, you know. But for me, the most important thing is what you put in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of that because our country, you know, our country is diverse, diversity in all its forms. So we have not even seen all of the Nigerian forms that can come.
It's easy to assume that the most popular and successful Nollywood movies derive from juju storylines and marriage proposal themes. We spoke with two film directors, Bond Emiruwa, who is former president of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, and Izu Ojukwu, director of the Netflix hit movie Amina, to find out more about the relationships between the movie screen and the Nigerian audience.
Well, Nollywood, like everybody says, started from 1993 with Living in Bondage. Of course, movies were being made in Nigeria before then. And it's always very important to establish this. I mean, the Ogunde and Paogunde and a lot of the other Yoruba were making movies. Even in the up north, movies were already being made. But why people trace Nollywood back to Living in Bondage is because Living in Bondage actually turned it into a movement, a mass movement. And so, from Living in Bondage, Nigeria could possibly say we gave birth to a movie industry. I've heard this argument a lot that people say movies were made before Living in Bondage. But we also, the only thing we say is that Living in Bondage created the movement that became Nollywood, finally became Nollywood. We were all working in television about this time. We had just gotten into television, and that was, in fact, television gave birth to the movie industry in Nigeria. It just moved from television into filmmaking. So a lot of us taught television, a lot of us wrote scripts in television way, a lot of us directed the television way. It was basically television. Of course, there were no screens. All the screens had collapsed. There were no more screens in Nigeria. Not even, I mean, in Lagos, for various reasons, cinemas had disappeared. And the few that were remaining weren't worth going to. They were filled with touts and, you know, layabouts. That was where the direct to video came up. It became an alternative for people to get entertainment right in their houses. There were millions of VCDs actually as of that point. It wasn't even the DVDs yet. Even before the VCDs, we had the big cassettes, you know, the VHS cassettes. That was where it actually started. And I think Ken Nebel was distributing that, actually selling that directly as of that point in time, which made it easy for him to actually use it to dub his movies and move on. Now, as a young filmmaker, all I wanted to do was make a movie, affect a few lives if I can, make some money in the process, you know, and prepare for the next one. When we came up with the idea of Mortal Inheritors, that was Zebe Jiro, Anja Minichi, and I. We didn't have much money. We couldn't do all the razzmatazz that movies were known for in America at that time. So the idea was to tell a very good story that we hoped could affect lives. And so we had to pick a theme that we thought people will relate with. Sickle cell anemia as of that time in Nigeria wasn't something very common. A lot of people didn't know anything about having their genotype checked and all that. So we thought that was something we could talk about. We did. And yeah, it was quite a success. We had a bunch of actors who weren't considered stars in Nigeria as of then. But one of the great things that came out of it was the movie was able to actually carry everybody along. The acceptance was pretty high, it was very huge. If I remember Tema Awards 1997, we actually got like 16 nominations, 10 awards. Sometimes when I watch the movie these days, I ask myself, is this what the 10 awards? Because I look at the pictures, I look at the sound, it's like, oh my God, did we do this? But the story still stands out. I mean, tears actually still come to my eyes when I watch it. And I think that's where the strength lay in the story itself.
I think we have evolved. At one point, we favor information and education above entertainment. We reorder the story, the essence, the essence of making film. There's usually emphasis on what's the morale of the story that you're telling, you know, and well, I've always said that if you want to learn morale, you go to the church or go to the mosque. When people walk into the cinema hall, they expect to be entertained. And so by way of entertainment, we can now inform and educate them. I make historical films. And first, there is little respect for our history. Unfortunately, it got to a point that history was even scrapped from the secondary school curriculum. Amina became the first ever Nigerian film to make top 10 in 53 countries on Netflix. It's something that myself I'm not aware of until someone called my attention to it, and I had to go look at the statistics, and eventually Netflix announced it in one of their events here in the country. What I saw was an opening, a window. I've had films that were also on Netflix that didn't attain that feat, but it appears to me that because it was an authentic African story.
With your mouth, you set him free yesterday. Or is your word no longer a bond? Or is your bond no longer the law of Zaza?
Talking about an African hero. The conversation on YouTube was across Africa. You know, because I've always wondered, there's a lot of African queens who are not celebrated, unfortunately. Like I've always said, our attitude to history is a huge problem. You know, but Amina gave me, you know, an insight. Yes, we struggled while making the film, you know, 2015, struggled seriously while making the film, well, but we're bent on ensuring that it was made. And eventually, the conversation that it triggered, you know, globally, and the places that it got to, including Europe and America, because we looked at the countries that it got to, like top 10 on Netflix chart. And so it was encouraging that what we've always clamored, when we tell authentic African stories, there's a chance that it will become attractive.
To a king who was once wise.
We protect our women in Zaza. It has always been this way.
I understand. With your mouth, you set him free yesterday. Or is your word no longer a bond? Or is your bond no longer the law of Zaza?
Before the night is over, you'll be the most powerful, feared woman in all of Zaza.
I loved him, Aladi Ahmed. He sacrificed his sword to save my life. I know the person responsible for this, Aladi, and he will pay dearly.
My cousin, be careful. War is coming.
Highness, accept the council's condolence over the loss of your father.
After you crowned your new Seriki, whose decision was it?
Clouds of change gather.
And you will do yourself great if you continue on the path of resistance.
No woman has ever sat on the throne of Zaza, and you will not be an exception.
Who gave that order?
Or is that what you want? So be it.
The future of Nollywood looks bright for women in front and behind the camera. This may have an impact on the type of movies that will be made in the future. Nollywood star Elvina Ibru is an actor, producer and director.
Well, my name is Elvina, baby Hebrew, and I'm from Delta State. I am an actor, a producer, a director. I write, but I don't like writing, but I do write. When I'm forced to, I will pick up I'll pick up a laptop. There's been a lot of progress as far as women are concerned in Nollywood. More, I would say, behind the camera. Quite a number of the most prolific producers and directors right now in Nollywood are female. You have Mo Amudu, who is, Ebony Live, now very much in click with the Netflix family. You have Bolanle Austin Peters, who is probably the biggest producer of theater show, theater stage plays in Nigeria. And she has also gone into Nollywood now. She did, in fact, she was the one that actually gave me my big break on screen. The role everybody knows me.
What kind of behavior is that?
Mokwalola is very, she's a snob. She's a snob. She likes the finer things of life, and she believes it's her right to have them. It's not like she thinks she needs to work. It's her right. She was born into wealth, so she doesn't know any other way, if you know what I mean.
But on a serious note, your 50th cost $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Your 51st will be higher.
Well, naturally.
How much you are telling people to go and do what the bloody hell like?
She's got a very sharp tongue, especially with her friends, her so-called friends, and her children. And she's very frank. She says what's on her mind. And she doesn't hold back.
Okay, Briggs. I'm going to deal with you with Lego. No, don't patronize me, you over-bleached heifer. Do you really think you can embarrass me in public and get away with it?
What are you talking about?
Really think so?
From Mokbeo that your husband's extended trip in the US is not a business one, that he's in prison for drug trafficking.
Hey, see wickedness. Hey, Tunde that is on contract with HSBC. Exactly. In fact, why am I having this conversation with two of you? This is nonsense.
I said it.
We said it. Yes,
I said it. So it's true.
It is all that glitters is not gold. So Mr. Holloway eventually finds his nemesis, and he's broken. His entire family is broken, every single one. So those on the other side who are thinking, oh, what a perfect family. It's all a facade. It's all a facade. To thine own self be true. Stop keeping up with the Kardashians. Cut your coat according to your material. Know yourself, know because.
As far as the momentum is concerned, I think we're in a very good place. I think Nollywood is going somewhere, definitely. But what we need to do is to start telling our stories and forget about Westerners. We need to tell our stories. We need to talk about our history. We need to talk about how, the women being in the house was not an African notion at all. That was brought in by the Europeans. They're the ones that believed a woman should be pale and like an English rose, and she should do cooking and stay with the children and needlework. Us Africans were busy farming, being warriors, being priestesses. We were busy. The women were busy. But two major problems. It's not with the skill. It's not with our brains. It's not with certainly not with our talent, because we are bloody talented. That is evident with what's happening with Afrobeat right now all over the world. You go into Marks and Spencer's in England, they're playing Burna Boy. So it's certainly not the talent. It's certainly not the numbers, because we are plenty. It's certainly not the intelligence or the resilience, because Nigerians are also very resilient people. We will work through madness. As in, I remember I was on a set from 5 a.m. in Abuja till 7 a.m. the next day.
We met up with Kobams Asuko at his studio during a recording session to get an exclusive view of one of the most prolific songwriters, producers, and composers in Nigeria. Kobams works with Davido, Banky, Asa, Bella Shmurda, Tiwa Savage, Somi, and others. He has also worked extensively on Nollywood movie soundtracks. We asked Kobams his opinion about the challenges of the entertainment industry and the sustainability of the current energy and momentum of Nollywood and the Nigerian music industry.
It's very easy to see where the lapses are for us as Africans, but I think we should also recognize that we're dealing with, structural imbalances that are some of our challenges. So, for instance, as someone who scores music, for movies and stuff, I'm one of the few fortunate ones who probably works in my own studio, and maybe I have access to a few things. And you can't even compare the quality of the things that I have access to what you would find in a Universal or a Tyler Perry studio, where you have the 80-something channel board, for a full orchestra, maybe 70-something strong, and all that. So there's just a lot that with support, I think we can actually pull off.
Yes, as long as wow. Give Yause a little bit of rock star, you know what I mean? A little bit of rock vibe, so that you're kind of, while still keeping in that party space, you're kind of exploring other genres ever so subtly. Love it. But we're going to have Tiwa's voice in this song, so you are kind of singing it, but very soulful, your style.
I think for me, there's a lot that connects music and film, especially in Africa. We are at an opportune moment where music and film both happen to be very strong elements with which we can export our culture. The Nollywood has played a very important role in telling the Nigerian story, albeit in ways that have not altogether been consolidated, or was not altogether consolidated from the beginning. And so there was a lot of there were divergent opinions and ideas. So on one end you had the narrative of the Babalawo, and on the other end, which is the witch doctor. On the other end you had the narrative of all things flashy and gaudy and ostentatious. On another end you have the narrative of beautiful stories of life. You saw all things Yoruba movies, and all that. But at the end of the day, beneath all of that, beneath that surface, what we've been able to do with Nollywood is tell African stories and show that we're not just people, who we don't, not even just people. We are amazing people. We're also people who don't live on trees, and we're people who drive cars and have fancy streets and live perfectly normal lives and have interesting, complex stories. And these stories are told through our movies. I think our music has also been able to do the same thing, because with people like Wizkid and Burna Boy, we've been able to export a sound that the world is now listening to. Again, still faced with the same challenge, because it's more reactionary. We've not been as intentional with the music that we're exporting. And so the world is embracing it, but we're sort of reactionary and we're not totally controlling it. But I think we're moving to that place, both in film and music, where we're now beginning to control, the narrative, if you will.
So we'll just get a vocalist to join you too and do something. You know what I mean?
What I would say is, in the same way that there's a lot of investment coming into Africa for tech, I think we should see the arts as important enough to invest in for the purpose of telling our own unique stories, because I feel like the stories out there are important. They will continue to be important. But the human story over time begins to feel played when it's the same story among the same demographic or among the same people told over a period of time. I think here is an opportunity to tell a unique story from a unique perspective. I think here is an opportunity to grow a people who are able to tell their own story. I think this story should be as authentic as possible, down to the music that supports it. So do not be surprised if African music, as it progresses for film, becomes a lot less string laden. And while I'm a student of Hans Zimmer and I love Hans Zimmer and everything he's done, I think that as an African, I have an advantage over Hans Zimmer to tell an African sonic story. And I feel that there is a story that has been believed in terms of the sound of Africa. And I would like to see that changed. I would like to see the power of the drums, the power of the voices, the power of wailing and all of that. And I think that these things can happen if the arts, music and film in Nigeria can enjoy the same kind of intentionality that tech is currently enjoying. I'd like to see that happen. I would love to be a part of that process. And if I had the powers to make it happen, that is what I would make happen right now. I think being blind and scoring for film is a very interesting combination. At first glance, it is the reason why you should not be doing it, because there are a lot of visual nuances and expressions that you may sometimes, or you are sometimes expected to miss. But conversations have never been only a matter of words. And so when the directing is good, you're able to, part of the good directing is not just getting the actors to say the words right, it's getting the actors to communicate the right body language. So you can tell a person is lying, without having to look at them, because that's communicated. And so I'm able to read all of this. What I'm also able to read, which is to my advantage, is the screenplay, because the screenplay gives you the intention, the original intention for a scene, and all of that. So, I mean, when you know the end, sometimes you kind of know how to build up to certain interesting moments. I guess another important thing for me as a blind person scoring is there's the soundtrack in my head all the time, and so I'm able to create that same emotion in a very vivid way. I'm able to draw from inside, without any external distraction, to be able to create, and then knowing what I know about music and knowing the right chords and the right progressions to invoke the right emotions, I'm able to create all of that sound, uninhibited by the external influences around me. So it works to my advantage in many ways. Also, at this point, I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I don't work in isolation. I also work with people who I've worked with over time, who are also able to provide me with the very important details, which I now translate from vision to sound to be able to create the right emotion for the viewer.
It's a bright dawn for Kobams and his fellow creatives in Nigeria, a country that bustles with endless promise and potential in many areas of world-class entertainment. With emerging filmmakers and musicians thriving there and across the world, it looks like we'll be enjoying films and music from Nigeria for some time to come.
The music industry too has come and become so global. Everywhere in the world, they feel Nigeria's music, like the same way they feel Nigerian movies. I've been in Brooklyn, I see West Indians, Jamaicans, they're watching Nigerian movies, and they said to me, wow, your houses are so beautiful. You have mansions in Nigeria. I said, yeah, that's the power of visuals. Very resilient people. Nigerians are resilient all over the world. Nigerians, anywhere they go, they register their presence and their ingenuity and that genius born within.
Artist Lemi Garioku puts it well. That is the power of visuals. And with that, we want to thank you for watching as we have come to the end of the Sounds of Nollywood series. We'd love to thank all of our guests, over 25 of them, for being so generous with their time. We also want to thank the National Museum of African Art for its excellent community engagement programs. Be safe and see you next time.